District of Columbia federal judge Randy Moss wants to know where the Epstein client list is that Pam Bondi said was on her desk. This in a case that was filed by independent journalist Jimmy Tobias under the Freedom of Information Act request. That case was filed back in August, right at the moment that Pam Bondi went on Fox and said, "It's sitting on my desk." And Jimmy said, "It is? I would like to see it as part of a public records request." So back in December, Judge Moss ordered the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi to file a declaration to identify the client list and to provide it by the 6th of January. They filed something. I wouldn't say it was responsive to the judge's order. And in a new hearing, he's now giving them another opportunity to explain where the client list is. And no, he's not going to allow the Department of Justice to point to the 3 million Epstein files that were just produced as a excuse for not complying with Freedom of Information Act request. I'm Michael Popok. You're here on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. Let's get down to the new reporting. Back in August, Jimmy Tobias, an independent journalist, shout out to independent journalism, filed in the District of Columbia a complaint right after Pam Bondi made those now infamous words that will live to hang her. Back in February of 2025, Pam Bondi told the American people that the client list was sitting on her desk. You remember the clip? Here it is.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet. I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide.
So Jimmy Tobias filed a lawsuit, and here's what he asked for in his filing. He said on July 23rd, he submitted a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, to DOJ. It said, I seek all of the Epstein-related records that Bondi was referring to during the interview appearance, including the document or documents she was referring to when she stated, it is sitting on my desk right now, including the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients that Bondi was asked about by the reporter. Okay. So that went through a process. See, Freedom of Information Act is a great procedure for groups like Democracy Forward, the ACLU, MeidasTouch, Legal AF, Jimmy Tobias, to get the government to produce documents. And you can't point to another process and say, oh, I'm going to produce them at a later time, and you'll go have to hunt for them. No. That's why there's a number of Freedom of Information Act cases that still exist related to Epstein and the disclosure around the Epstein files, even with the disclosure of the Epstein files. Judge Chutkan has one related to Democracy Forward and communications directly between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. As an example, there's a case up at the Second Circuit Court of Appeals related to the parent company of the National Enquirer having made about 5 years ago an Epstein document request. And now you've got Jimmy Tobias. So after this was filed, the Judge Randy Moss, issued a order in December of 2025 and told the Department of Justice that by January 6th, they needed to identify the documents and explain what was on Pam Bondi's desk. So this guy named Sean O'Neill, and all of these documents are up on Legal AF Substack for you to read. Guy named Sean O'Neill, Chief of Staff of the Office of Information Policy and responsible for responding to Freedom of Information Act request, filed what he did. And he said he went through the Department of Justice materials. And on page 4, he reveals the following in the filing. Based on the substance of the request, which you heard, they've determined that the OAG, the Office of the Attorney General, was the appropriate office to search. As a result of this search, OIP was informed, that's his organization, that there are no records responsive to plaintiff's request for the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Now remember, if they don't provide the list, I tell you who will. Survivors will. Lisa Phillips, a client of mine and an Epstein survivor, said as much on Capitol Hill that if they don't produce the client list, you know who will? The couple of thousand Epstein survivors and victims who know who abused them, and they will provide the list. Here's a clip of Lisa Phillips.
I would like to announce here today, us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know who were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details.
Well, when it comes to dog food, it feels like you have to choose between fresh and healthy or easy to store and serve, but never both. Well, you don't have to choose anymore, thanks to Sundays. Sundays was founded by a veterinarian and mom, Dr. Tori Waxman, who got tired of seeing so-called premium dog food full of fillers and synthetics. So she designed Sundays, air-dried real food made in a human-grade kitchen using the same ingredients and care you'd use to cook for yourself and your family. And my Lily, a Border Collie chocolate lab mix, loves it, and we love it for her. Every bite of Sundays is clean and made from real meat, fruits and veggies with no kibble. That means no weird ingredients you can't pronounce and no fillers. Compared to kibble or other brands out there, Sundays invest 50 times more in its ingredients to ensure premium quality. Because your dog deserves food made with care, not in the interest of cost cutting. Even if you don't have a dog yourself, you still want the dogs you love to get the same quality food you'd want for your own family. Real ingredients, no fillers, and something that actually supports their health. And the best part, you just scoop and serve. No freezer, no thawing or prep, no mess. Make the switch to Sundays. Go right now to sundaysfordogs.com/legalaf50 and get 50% off your first order. Or you can use code LegalAF50 at checkout. That's 50% off your first order at sundaysfordogs.com/legalaf50. sundaysfordogs.com/legalaf50 or use code LegalAF50 at checkout. So back to their response that the judge found insufficient. He basically declares there is no Epstein client list, and they've done a systemic review of the Epstein material, and they've revealed no incriminating client list based on a July 7th memo that the Justice Department set out, totally undermining Pam Bondi. Now, Pam Bondi is going to be appearing before the House Oversight Committee next week. And that's going to be required watching here on MeidasTouch, and Legal AF will run it live. Now, we move to a court hearing in front of Judge Moss. And he said, listen, I'm not playing a game of gotcha. He said, this is not sufficient. I want a Pam Bondi Attorney General declaration identifying what the heck she was referring to when she said these client documents, Epstein files and client lists was sitting on her desk. That's all. And then once I know the answer to that, I'll decide whether the government has complied with its FOIA responsibilities yet. But I can't do that until you give me a proper declaration. So no, Pam Bondi is not off the hook yet. And these are the same questions that the Senate Judiciary Committee, led by Senator Blumenthal, the House Democratic Judiciary Committee, led by Ranking Member Jamie Raskin for the Democrats. They're going to be asking her these hard questions. Where are the client lists? Where are the documents? Now, they've tried to constantly conflate and redefine the Epstein files in an elaborate shell game to hide them from the American people. First, the Department of Justice said, and Pam Bondi said, the files are on her desk, as you heard. Then they said, no, the files are with federal judges, and we got to go get federal judges. We'd love to produce them, but the federal judges have to give us that permission. So they said, well, we have to go to Florida for some Epstein files, in New York for some Epstein files, and Ghislaine Maxwell's case and Epstein's case. And then when those federal judges said, we'll release what we have, but you have the giant pile of Epstein files, they then went to Congress and said, oh, we'd love to produce them, but Congress has to give us the permission, which is completely a non sequitur. Completely a violation of separation of powers. The documents that we refer to as the Epstein files, which is everything in the executive branch, not just the Department of Justice, not just the FBI, has never resided with Congress, has always resided with the executive branch. And the executive branch has never needed the congressional branch, the legislative branch, to give them permission to release the documents. That was just a ruse. That was just a charade that they tried to pull on the American people. We'd love to produce them, but we're waiting for Congress to give us the permission. So they wasted more time. Bad things are happening, make it happen slower. So they waited for the Epstein Transparency Act, and then they fought against it until Representatives Massey and Khanna got 208 shamed effectively 5 or 6 Republicans into supporting the 200 and signing the 218 signatures that are required for the discharge petition to get the Epstein Act on the House floor for a vote. And then everybody joined in but one. Delay. And still we don't have the things the Treasury Department has, like the Internal Revenue Service, bank records, how to track the money flow. We just have the DOJ and FBI files. But we've got these separate cases that I'm following for you here. The case in front of Judge Moss, brought by Jimmy Tobias, the case brought by Democracy Forward in front of Judge Chutkin for the communications between Epstein and Donald Trump, the case brought by the National Enquirer in the Second Circuit to get all the Epstein files. And you can see judges are not going to allow the Department of Justice to point to the 3 million, which is half or 1/10 of the entire pile of Epstein documents, and get away with it. I'll continue to follow it all right here. You're on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. Come over to Legal AF YouTube channel, hit the free subscribe button, become a Legal AF Substacker. That's a new word. A Legal AF Substacker, 35% off on Legal AF Substack annual membership going on right now. Till my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.